Oh, hi. Are you here for the fun question? Me too. The Fun Question, a show where we explore the strange and powerful ways people engage in a hidden life of fun. I'm your host, Dr. David Thomas, the professor of fun, coming to you live from my hidden lair and back for another week of playful exploration. This week, my guest is Paul Pethick. He's a writer, illustrator, animator, designer, drummer, founder of Play Lab, and author of one of my favorite books about play, and certainly one of the most beautiful books I have, The Power of Play, a tome that explores how play shapes imagination, creativity, and culture. I met Paul last year at a play workshop in the UK where he's based, and I have been obsessed with his book and his thinking ever since. And it's a delight now to interrogate Paul as we dive in to play. What is it? How does it work? And why should we care? So welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
Now, I want to start, of course, with the silver sticker on the back of your book, which is beautiful, from Brian Eno. And he says, I wish every parent, teacher, and politician would read this liberating and joyous book. Now, I know why this is super important. Why is it so important to have an endorsement like Brian Eno on a book about play, since he is a musician?
I guess the truthful answer to that is I was thinking about people who I could reach. And, everyone knows that an endorsement, a validation, it's great. And I'm in a singing group with Brian. I spent a lot of time with him. So it was a pretty short thinking session to think, I also know, he's a great player. That kind of drives most of the stuff he's ever done at some level. So for me, he was the perfect guy to have on the cover.
Yeah, and maybe you could say just a little bit. I mean, I know he has this deck of cards, which is sort of this playful way to be inspired in the studio.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, I think the whole point of writing this book was to broaden out. It used to drive me completely nuts that people would use the metaphors of play and games all day long. You switch on the news for 10 minutes and you will hear someone referring to, play in some form or other, or games. And I used to think, but the moment you mention play, people immediately put some quote marks around it or put it in a little box and say, yeah, but you mean kid stuff, or you mean something below a certain age, or some activity that's the opposite of work. And I think, no, really, it's the basis of all creativity. I mean, it's kind of our USP. So Brian also was one of those people I saw using this in everything he did. Every situation, he'd turn it on his head and think, how can I do this differently? That's
Yeah, and I think famously he has a deck of cards that I think they're called oblique strategies, which they're like prompts, creativity prompts. And I have to say, as I was reading The Power of Play, your book, I felt like it was a bound version of oblique strategies simply because you can read it front to back, but it's just as useful flipping through it and being like, wow, pow, cool. Was that by design, or is that just the way your brain works, or is that just the nature of play?
Well, I think I put in the audio version, which came a bit later. It took me a while to realize one of the things that has been ticking in my brain for since I saw it about the age of 5 was this great little film. The animation in it is so rusty now by modern standards, but it came from the Eames office, and it was called Powers of 10, I think. And it just completely blew my brain when I saw it. So it starts out, this guy sitting on a picnic blanket somewhere like Chicago, and it starts zooming into this arm where there's a mosquito, and it goes in and in and in until you're at the molecular level, the atomic level. And then it starts coming out, and you get that kind of zoom out into space further and further by powers of 10 until you're out in, far. And since then, everything, I think I look at the world through that lens all the time. And it occurred to me that play operates in the same way. It operates in our brain, it operates in biology, it operates in physics, it operates in the cosmos, and in all our interactions. So there's some kind of zoom in, zoom out thing. So all these stages, like in technology and culture, you can kind of frame them in different ways, but they're all on the same zoom scale.
I got you. So everything is related in some sort of a playful, interactive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you call the book The Power of Play, and it's got a picture of a stick on the cover, which I guess is the primordial play object, right?
yeah, yeah.
What is the power of play? Summarize your 350-page masterpiece on a
In
podcast.
a way, I think there's one bit in there which was the trigger for thinking, it should be the stick that's on the cover. Well, there's a couple of references. One of them is that in the Museum of Play, which I think is something to do with Stuart Brown, if I'm right, it's at National
Yeah, he's
Institute.
participated. Yeah, it's a Strong Museum of Play. It's in Rochester.
Exactly, the
Yeah,
strong, the
yeah,
strong.
yeah.
And I read a little piece about how they put lots of toys on display to make people pine for their childhood and go, oh, I remember that one. But occasionally they just put something very ambiguous, very kind of ubiquitous, and sometimes it's a cardboard box, and everyone goes, yeah, that's the thing I liked more than the thing that was in it. And the other one they put up recently was a stick, because of course every person probably ever has picked up a stick and used it as a sword, or run it along some railings, or done something with it, or stuck it into a snowman. Um, so it's kind of like it's the lever for the imagination. It's the one thing you can turn into anything, and every kid's done it. So it felt like, okay,
So I mean, it
we'll
makes
do.
perfect good sense to me, and I know they put the stick in as part of their toy hall of fame at the Strong. Now, how do you get from there to the power of play? What is, in your words, the power of play for someone who's kind of like plays just for fun, plays just for leisure, plays just to pastime? What's the
Well, I think
power?
I mean, obviously it comes back to imagination. Funny enough, I thought lately, I suddenly had a fairly radical idea that maybe human imagination is just a blip. It's an evolutionary, side stream, and it's going to end in our destruction, and it will have turned out to be unuseful in the whole history of the earth. But anyway, imagination is where it begins and ends. And imagination is a playful business. We have this massive jumble of material in our brains, and it's kind of thrown together like a
Mhm.
random ball machine with all these tiny little connections.
So for you, is the power of play really its ability to invoke the imagination or harness the imagination, or
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, the problem with talking about play is it's huge and it goes off in so many different directions. To some people, they immediately think of, the Premier League football game
yeah,
or
yeah.
any other number of sports, because they're not, maybe they've just grown up and they haven't thought of themselves as creative. But of course, that was created in the first place, so that's a creative act to come up with the sport and then to impose the rules on it. It is the basis of all scientific discovery, the basis of all great bits of art. Everything comes from play. But people
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sort of shove it into a corner and say, oh, yeah, but that's different. This is creativity.
So one of the things I like about you, Paul, is you're a deep thinker about play, but you're also a player. I mean, you play music, and you
Mhm.
play with things, and you're a designer. Can you maybe even talk to me about your kind of personal experience of the relationship between play, imagination, enjoyment, fun, and creativity? I mean, how do we get from play to creativity?
Well, first of all, I think I even started down this road because I was in advertising, I was in animation, I was in lots of different sort of creative things. I mean, I've sort of grown up doing art in one way or another. And it was only when it was about, I don't know, 25 years ago, I'd say, I ground to a halt, and I couldn't understand where my kind of mojo for any of this stuff had gone. And I realized that it was because I'd lost the play. But I'm really quick to stick in there that it isn't necessarily about fun, because anyone who, great creators that I know and I've interviewed and I've researched all around the world, these people work bloody hard. They've come up with an idea, and maybe it is the hardest work that they've ever done. And people who aren't involved in that field have no idea how much difficulty that is to wake every morning and generate this kind of energy. But there is play at the beginning of it. So the first thing is, when people sort of immediately stick play and fun together, I go, with it, that's one thing, but it's not everything. So Yeah, I think people. I'd like to think that this whole idea would broaden out, and people would assume, like, if you try and bring into play in a business situation, you could be looking at strategy, you could be looking at kind of human centered design, you could be looking at all kinds of things. But people assume, oh, is it a team building day? Is it going to be really embarrassing?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, well, but it might be, but it might be lots of other things.
Well, just to clarify, I mean, we certainly, I think, both agree that play can be used towards very serious purposes. I think you, at some point in time, describe play as the operating system of culture, which I want to get to. So no doubt that play can be trivial, but it also can be deadly serious. I'm just curious if you think, is there such a thing as play without pleasure? Is there just the gritty hard work of play that people don't see? Or is play always, as hard as it can be and as important as it can be, always something soul filling and rewarding?
That's a big one. Um, I guess so. I mean, I suppose it's different people's idea. It's like different people's idea of pain. Some people say, "Oh my God, the terrible pain." If you could transmit that, you'd go like, "What? It's nothing.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
toenail." Um, yeah, I think there has to be some element of pleasure in it, but pleasure comes in many forms. Some people like a spanking.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
I
for
don't.
sure. Yeah. So maybe that's it. Maybe what you're really steering us towards is that there is a particular association of play with childhood and childishness, and you see play as a generative force that could be used in it. Certainly, meaningful adult pursuits.
Yeah,
So not all play, maybe we should say this, maybe not all play is recreational, but play does have some sort of reward built into it.
yeah. I mean, it seems to me that the sort of big division in play is when it becomes gamified and we
Hmm.
create games, and games, as we know, can get quite tricky.
Hmm.
I mean, look at the world right now. It's a mass of games. Particularly, it is people involving us in their games for
Yes,
profit or for power or whatever. So
not
there's this
fun.
sort of corrupting effect of coming up with things, building a rule set. I mean, let's if we're going to get deep, religion. Let's take that.
Yeah,
There's a lot of play in that, but in community and togetherness.
costumes.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's cosplay, cosplay to the max. But then it can become corrupted and riven with too many rules and too many structures. Um, yeah, so there's this constant feeling that you have to be checking yourself and saying, am I doing this for for a win-win situation or for a zero sum win?
For sure. Well, I suppose we could assume that humans can corrupt anything, including Christmas puppies and apple pie. So,
Yeah,
but beyond that, yeah,
we're getting better at it as well.
yeah, yeah. So back to the play as like this part of the operating system of culture, which reminds me very much of Johann Hunziker's Homo
Yeah,
Ludens. Tell me
yeah.
more what you mean by that. What is play is in the operating system, or is the operating system of culture? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, if you look around and I mean, the way I look at it, I look around and the only things, everything I see that isn't a tree, a rock, another animal, or some natural force, we've come up with it. We've
Hmm.
invented it.
Hmm.
Other animals, they might build a little nest out of old twigs, bits of scavenged stuff, but they don't try and conquer the world. They don't build buildings generally on the whole. So all this stuff we've come up with. And all those crafts in the first place that led to everything we see around us came out of an exploratory sense of play, poking about what does this do? If I squish it like this, turn it like that, bash it with a hammer, you know, um, so everything builds out from this exploratory sense of play. And then people impose rules on it. You must only do it this way.
Hmm.
So it's the same with all the rules of the social norms, and the rules are created in a kind of playful manner. I think Heisinger got to a point where he didn't want to look at the mind at all. It was like that was a bit of a scary area for him. So he talked a lot. He was a historian. He talked a lot about the Middle Ages and courtly rituals and all the rest of it. He didn't really look into the psychology of it and how the brain is a play machine.
So, thinking about that, so maybe exploratory play, we discover inventive new techniques, we put new things together, we, discover and create. Where does play fit in sort of the day-to-day normal of life where I got to get up, make my bed, brush my teeth, and get to work? I mean, how does play fit in to the routine of things that must be done that don't feel very playful?
Well, yeah, fair enough. Martin at Exeter was made a good reference to this of how you could just make, the normal everyday drudgery a little bit
Yeah.
more fun by just, thinking consciously about it, thinking how can I do make this more interesting for myself. Everyone would have their own techniques, but I guess the first thing is to look at the world as a slightly absurd place and think I can actually make my own version of this. I think particularly now people are so bombarded by stuff all the time that they're kind of beaten into a shape, and you shape yourself to fit the technology you're trying to pass through. That's all wrong, isn't it? I mean, this stuff should fit us, not the other way around. I just heard a thing about people applying for jobs, and I thought, what a nightmare! You can't just walk in somewhere and kind of impress people with your character because you've got to fit through this little pipeline that's just getting rid of you at every turn. So that says to me we're losing some play.
Yeah. When you say, kind of approach the world with sort of a whimsical or an absurdist eye, it reminds me of Paul the animator that must look at the world and it warps, it distorts, colors pop, things do
Yeah,
weird stuff. I mean, do we just we need an animator's eye on our life? Is that what we're
yeah.
missing?
Why not? I mean, listen, I look around at the world now and I think you can't write this stuff. I mean, I'm not the only person to say that. It's like
Yeah.
satire is dead because everything is so bonkers anyway.
Yeah.
It's the way we've gone down that road. So we might as well say, okay, now, let's go the whole hog and reshape it exactly as we want.
Well,
Might as
let's
well.
let's talk about that. I mean, the subtitle of your book is How Play and Its Games Shape Life. So
Yeah.
I think like with the work that you did and putting the book together and all the things that you digested and all the people that you talked to, are there some like tips or tricks or ideas that you would share with just the average person of like, hey, here's how you can do this. I mean, in practice, like here's what it looks like to be more playful today. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah. I think definitely. I mean, there's those sort of creative people that I've spoken to a lot and looked at a lot, and they always have some way of flipping things on their head. I mean, the oblique strategies is a perfect example. Stop every now and then and think, okay, what would I do if both my hands were tied behind my back and I had to do the same thing? Or if I've got to write a piece of text instead of going to Chat GPT, why don't I write it like my dad would have written it? Yeah, any
Mm,
number of things. It's just a little imaginative tweak to everything you do, or even as much as instead of following exactly the same path to the tube station in the morning, go a different way. Give yourself an extra 5 minutes, go a different way. Look at the world in a. I mean, I don't know about you, but every now and then I realize I haven't looked up for a long time. So I consciously, well, maybe not inside the room, but so I consciously walk down the street and I go, oh, wow, I had no idea that this was
yeah,
like this because you're so focused on, the
yeah, yeah.
drudge.
What sends us down those kind of roads of normalcy? Is it habit? Is it safety? Is it just we've
Yeah,
had our creativity suppressed since we were children? What is
I,
it?
yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think there's a terrible effect in education where there's a kind of filter system that happens when you're 5 to 7 or something, where you've been allowed to play and explore things without too many rules, and then suddenly it has to be like this, and then suddenly there's this kind of like, well, you're a bit more mathsy, so you go over there, and you're a bit more this, that, and the other. And science
Hmm.
people go over there because they're not creative. Forget about that. Even though they're highly creative, you can't play a musical instrument immediately. You can't do music. Off you go.
Yeah.
Um, it starts killing that agency people have when they're 7, where they don't care about the rules. They just dive in and do it.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about that. Like, what advice would you give to teachers, to parents, even to business leaders to try to help recuperate some of that creativity, innovation, and playfulness.
Yeah, I mean, there are some great schools running around the world in little pockets where they've realized that project-based stuff really is a lot more applicable to the future than just working your way through these subjects and through the linear process of downloading information. So they just say to kids, what is the thing that fires you up? Is it blacksmithing, or is it medieval sword fights, or is it future starship design, or whatever it is? And then they're allowed to go off, and as long as they take it super seriously and really research it and come up with a physical item or a performance, then that's good, because they're learning outwards. They're finding a spot and they're just learning outwards from that spot.
Sort of like a kind of follow your interest, follow your bliss kind of thing.
Exactly.
What do I do in corporate America? Do I take my software engineers and send them to blacksmithing school? Like
Maybe,
how do I channel this in the work environment?
maybe it's very interesting that I was reading the other day about some of the big tech companies. Instead of you submitting a CV, they send you the link to a kind of Sim City game,
Okay.
and they give you a week to play it and see what you come up with. If you burn the city down, they'll know what kind of person you are. If you manage to turn a profit and build another Trump Tower, they'll also know what kind of person you are. I'm thinking, wow, this is a turn. So, you know, game playing to find out what kind of person you are.
Yeah, and a lot of the work that we've done in Professors at Play, we talk about the power of play, but I always joke that every workshop, every talk is the same, which is we're just trying to give people permission to play, kind of along the lines you're saying, which is like there's not a blueprint, there's not a recipe book, there are infinite recipe books.
Yeah,
It's more like if you want to cook, cook. There's not the recipe, there's recipes, and
yeah,
there's improvisation, there's ingredients. Go for it.
absolutely. Do you know what always amazes me is, I mean, sometimes I've done workshops with people and they're so bound up with their fears that it's quite a bit of hard work to get them going. But there's more times when people just go pow. I did a thing in that same CQ studio that we met in, and it was this lady Kate and her team, who are clinical researchers, healthcare in society. So you don't think they're going to give you the most imaginative response. But I said, let's make some little films or some performances. Gave them a few parameters and a load of kind of bits of junk and stuff. Man, they were off. They just,
Yeah, yeah.
it was mad. They built little sets. They made poetry. They wrote a script. We edited it, and then they gave a performance, stuff that would blow your mind. And I didn't really have to push them at all. They just came up with it. So it just shows me again that people are brimming with ideas and they want to get it out there. They just kind of need the permission.
So in a sense, yeah, put tools in people's hands and give them a space, and they will create. Well, then let's play a little bit. I mean, I think of your book as sort of a big kind of Julia Child of play. I mean,
Okay.
you can read it and learn a lot about play, but you can also just flip through it. I have not planned this. I'm just going to flip to something, and I
Okay.
want you to kind of help me brainstorm. Like, what could a listener do with this bit of insight? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
is there a part like where in the book you want me to put? Front,
Uh,
back, middle, anywhere?
if you're going to be random, be
I'm
random.
going to random. Okay, here we go. So this is what
I
we
mean,
got. We
it
got
might be some heavy
okay,
science.
playing with machines. Okay, so this is what. Tell me about this. What you remember the playing with machines bit?
Yeah, I think this is the kind of birth of it seems funny to me that we're dealing with AI, we're dealing with
Yeah,
high tech, and this stuff, specifically has come through a process of, I mean, you can see such a perfect line of play moving into rule sets. You know, what
yeah,
the
yeah.
first thing that researchers did in the late 50s when they were building massive great computers was come up with star fighting games. They'd have some terrible little basic green graphics
Hmm.
on a screen, and they would be shooting each other from different universities. And of course, the most powerful chipsets have come through gaming systems, which have then built computers. So the whole thing has been a playful exploration.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you
Good
know,
point. I actually know that I read a paper that Charles Babbage, who designed the the earliest software, and Lady Adage, Ada Lovelace wrote some of the first software. Some of the designs were for noughts and crosses for tic tac
Yeah,
toe.
it's
So even
always the same.
even from the conceptual
Yeah.
earliest parts of computing, they were thinking about games.
But what I loved also was that, chess has always been in there as the highest form of human intellect. They
Yeah,
were
yeah,
even cheating way back then by having a little guy hiding inside the mechanical Turk
yeah,
system.
yeah, yeah. To
I mean,
pretend to be an automated chess system.
that's quite playful in itself.
So I like that you pull that thread through to AI. Like, how can we be more playful for AI? Do you type funny prompts into AI? Do
Well,
you do
I mean,
dirty limericks? What do you do? So
I'm really torn with this because I spend every day I look at a social post, a social platform like Threads, and I see people like crying because they've been forced to use AI by their company, and they really hate it. Or people just railing against all the slop we're bombarded with, and they feel like their brains are atrophying and turning to mush, which I can totally get.
yeah, yeah,
But at the same time, of course, people are totally drawn to mucking around with it. That when they
yeah, yeah,
realize that they can prompt an entire game themselves or a great piece of animation,
yeah,
although is it great? I mean, I don't know about you, but I look at tons of kind of creative output. Almost none of it. I don't think any of it touches me because I think we're amazingly well tuned to pick up the human ingredient in stuff.
hmm.
Some kind of atomic level, we can tell if people have touched it, or if it comes from a place.
I
So
wonder. Yeah, good.
yeah.
I
So I
wonder
mean, so,
too.
yeah, I
Go
like
ahead.
mucking with these things to find out what they do.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder too if people, misunderstand AI slop is essentially the brainstorming phase. I mean, if you're a musician, if you're an animator, if you're a writer, you get it down first and then you edit.
Yeah,
And somehow it's like if AI is a part of your brainstorming process, that's different than first thought, best thought,
yeah,
let the machine decide for you.
yeah. I mean, again, it's a sort of tension. On the one hand, I feel like, yeah, sure, everyone should be free to explore and come up with a piece of music. If no one else likes it and thinks it's crap,
Yeah.
and that's your problem. But then I think of all the people that have spent 25 years learning to play the violin to a point where it's not painful to anyone else. And it's in fact, I've been thinking about this a lot. The friction that is involved in any pursuit, not just creative things, but any pursuit, is the friction that is sort of the point, which is why when people just say, "Oh, that's so easy now," I mean, it's like super frictionless, just get from here to there. Well, that's the joy. You've just removed half of the joy because the joy comes from the friction and the pain. And then when you finally conquer those things, wow, you feel good.
I
A bit
think
like
that's
sitting
an
in an ice
excellent
bath
point.
and then
Yeah.
going into a warm house.
I think that also explains, tic-tac-toe's fun when you're five. And then, once it's a solved problem, the friction's gone.
Yeah.
You pursue games that you don't know if you're going to win,
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have to put some labor into. And they're still fun, they're still
Yeah.
play, but
Yeah.
you're right. There's a
So is
coefficient of
this
friction there. Yeah.
is this Trump's rationale behind the Strait of Hormuz, that he thought, now I don't want to make this too simple, so I'll make it really frictional.
It could be. I mean, I have thought at times that although I think he's an agent of chaos, he may be the most playful president we've
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
and maybe not in a good way. Maybe there needs to be
Yeah.
maybe play should happen in the arena, not everywhere at all times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one last question for you, and then we got the bonus round, the lightning round, where I was asking
Okay.
some random
Okay.
questions. From all your work and everything that you've done and you've looked at, what do you think are some of the big misconceptions that people have about play that you kind of feel like you have to get over to even introduce this conversation of what play is for, how play can work for you, what it can do?
Well, I think that I've already referenced the first one, which is most people. Well, I say most people. I haven't asked everyone on the planet, but it seems like there is this idea. Once you leave childhood, you leave childish things behind, and that's one of them. But you occasionally return to it for a little refresher if you're lucky. But most of life should be a serious business. But those are people that haven't seen the connections between, creativity and innovation and invention and play, and how these things are totally bound up.
Yeah.
So, that I constantly have to, if someone says, so, what are you interested in, or what's your field? And I say play, and then I can just see them kind of go like, there's a glaze that comes on.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, this is kid stuff. And it's very interesting to me that in the sort of, like on LinkedIn, the groups that I'm part of, the balance between male and female is pretty heavily skewed female,
Mm-hmm.
because it's about child caring, or it's about, early years development, or any of these things. Whereas the guys are into serious strategizing and games and winning.
Yeah.
Not seeing that, of course, the products that they should be coming up with, or the customer centric design, is a playful business. So there's this, and occasionally, we should use a bit of that, like Lego serious play. Let's do that, but serious note, serious. Yeah. Sorry,
Any quick thoughts? No, you hit the question, like what's the big thing you want to get past around play? And it's that play is childish. Why do you think society likes that leave playful things behind? What's in it for the culture to knock that out of our heads?
I don't know, but particularly when so much then goes on to be a kind of gamification.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 2 scam calls just today, and I'm thinking, you guys are gamers. You're trying to game the world for your own. So we're at it all the time.
Yeah.
And then there is a playfulness that comes through in the media, but it's always this mixture, constant looping of playfulness and games, and it's indivisible.
Yeah. Well, we know we need it, so we'll just keep chasing it, even though culture wants to beat it out of us. Who knows why? We'll figure that one out later.
Well,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
tell you what, one of the sort of smallest instances I think of is if you allow yourself to bump into someone, a total stranger, during your day, and allow yourself the time to just have a conversation without it being creepy or weird or anything. And you realize, wow, I don't do this enough. I remember going to the shops with my mum when I was about 5, and she would talk to other people. And I'd go like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. But actually I realized that's a great thing. And that's why I love getting in a taxi in a foreign city, sitting up front with the driver and having a chat about anything, because you get a window into this other world.
Yeah. So if nothing else from this podcast, people should take away, when you're outside, look up, look around, take a different path to work, and talk to a stranger. These are really easy things that
They're
we're
really
afraid
easy,
to do.
but they're like a doorway to a whole other world.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, so here, lightning round. I got 3
Okay.
questions for you, random questions. You get like a sentence to answer them.
Okay.
So let's start with this one. What's a toy, a tool, or an object that you still love irrationally?
I think I love a catapult.
The catapult. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, because it's so basic, and you can. Funny enough, I went to my dad. Oh, it's only a sentence. Let's stick with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There we
I
go.
can tell you a whole story, but I won't.
Well, next time we'll have to Paul part 2. Okay. For you, what's more fun, making something, performing something, or watching someone else discover something you've made?
It's got to be performing something, because particularly playing music, drumming, playing with other people, you can't beat it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so here you go. You can have more than a sentence on this one if you want. But what's one child's activity or children's activity adults should steal back immediately?
Pranking people.
Okay.
So the one I've seen a few times on social posts, which I love, is putting a lot of cling film across the doorway and just seeing people go boink into it. Gets me every time.
Okay. Pranks. Don't.
Gentle.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks so much. We'll get links to your website and your book. You got an audio version of the book, which I think I'm going to have to get, because this will be way better than podcasting. Yeah. It's a brilliant book. You can buy it online. I think you buy used copies now, because I think the first run sold out.
Yeah.
But it's a fabulous book, and I really appreciate all you do for the world through play.
Thank you very much, David. It's been great fun.
So clearly, I could have talked to Paul quite a bit longer. He's a fascinating person. He's worked in so many different creative endeavors that when he talks about play, I really hear the practitioner coming to terms with this broader understanding of what play means to him. Now, you can imagine that Paul and I have a slight disagreement about the relationship between play and fun. I see fun as really central to play, but I don't know that Paul and I are that far apart. I think that he's just trying to emphasize that play isn't just leisure and recreation, that play isn't just something you do to feel good directly, that it can have other purposes. It can stimulate creativity and innovation in your business. It can inspire learning. It can, accentuate the quality of your art. And I agree all with that. And I think he and I do kind of meet in the middle and find something very, very special about play itself. Maybe the answer to that is I love Paul's description of play as the operating system underlying culture. And we did talk about Johann Hunziker in his book Homo Ludens. Hunziker made this argument, 80 years ago that underlying kind of human civilization is this kind of play attitude. I think Paul's just thinking about it even more broadly, not just as a culture forming force, but just the way that, children play in the mud and with sticks eventually becomes how adults play with, physics and engineering and chemistry to create medicine and buildings and cars and rocket ships. And I think that's really a wonderful way of thinking about how play is this essential part of life. It's this thing that really drives us forward, and not to get too biological about it, but really that play is an essential evolutionary kind of piece of the puzzle, that it keeps us from getting stuck. So in that sense, I think, when he says that play is the operating system of culture, it's really because creativity is in the software of our brain. Like without playful creativity, we really just would kind of be, robots, and we just repeat everything that we do. So a great conversation with a fascinating guy. I would encourage you to check out the links. Get the book if you can. I'm going to download the audiobook because I think that there's so much wonderful, rich information in there. And again, it's less of a textbook and more of just a great cornucopia of thinking and ideas. And I think it would be a fun one to listen to as you drive back and forth to the day job. Thanks again to Paul. I will look forward to talking to him again and catching up with what he's up to. And yeah, hey folks, look up, talk to strangers, take a different route, and be creative. And of course, have fun.